She's not even worthy. To mop the floors walked by real soldiers. The words cracked through Fort Liberty's briefing room like a verdict. A bucket crashed to the stone floor. Water splashed wide, echoing in the silence. The woman in the faded gray uniform knelt to gather scattered files. She said nothing. But when she looked up, ice-blue eyes locked onto Colonel Cole, the room froze. Not from fear, from recognition. In 30 minutes, Colonel Cole will kneel. Not before her, but before a name he tried to erase from every military archive he could touch. She hasn't come back for justice. She never left, because the janitor no one saw. Carried a black ops directive, buried for 3 years, a truth silenced by the man who gave the original order. And tonight, the past refuses to stay buried. They said she was harmless, a fixture in the background. Gray uniform, gray mop, gray life. Evelyn Carter had been cleaning the halls of Fort Liberty for 1042 days. Same cart, same route, same silence. No one remembered when she started. No one noticed when she walked past the locked armory and glanced just once at the keypad. She never looked lost. She never looked around for directions. She already knew. Some said she was strange. Others said she was forgettable. But those who paid attention, the few who actually saw her, noticed things that didn't quite fit. A junior intel officer once whispered, "You ever see her hands?" Calluses, not from pushing a mop. Evelyn always kept moving, head down, movements precise, but beneath her collar, just visible when she reached forward, was the faint outline of a tattoo. Black, angular, a ghost emblem, half faded. She caught that officer staring once, didn't smile, didn't explain. Just said, "I've been on floors bloodier than these." Then walked away, leaving only the echo of her boots on tile and a silence that wasn't there before. Tomorrow, that same officer would check the base's classified tattoo registry and find nothing. There was a day Evelyn Carter stopped being Sergeant Carter. It wasn't at a funeral. It wasn't with a folded flag. It was with a phone call that never made it into the official logs. That day, she received a directive, 3 words on a secure line. Stand down. Disappear. And she did. She became the woman who mopped the war rooms, swept past medal displays, and watched men speak of valor with mouths too clean for blood. One of those mouths belonged to Colonel David Cole, a rising star. Decorated, respected, untouchable. He never looked her in the eye. Not until the morning she fixed the jammed M4 faster than his own armorer. He said, "Where the hell did you learn that?" She only replied, "Some ghosts don't need to haunt. They just wait." Later that week, a security breach was flagged in a locked archive clearance level Omega Black. Only one login attempt. Unsuccessful. But whoever tried knew the code prefix. They called it Operation Glass Viper. Classified, sealed, denied. On paper, it didn't exist. But to Evelyn Carter, it was the night 5 of her teammates never came back, including the man she trusted most. Captain Ben Cole. Yes, that Cole. David Cole's younger brother. The official story blamed faulty intel, but Evelyn had seen the intercepted SAT images herself, seen the inconsistencies, the too-perfect layout of the compound. Ben had flagged it, twice. He requested a delay. He never got it. Because someone high up, someone who wore more stars than scars, had pushed the mission forward, to impress brass. 3 days later, 4 body bags came home. One was never recovered. And Evelyn Carter, the woman who called for caution, was pulled from the field. Silenced. Stripped of rank. All under the clause reassigned for psychological instability. But she remembered everything. And she kept the last message Ben ever sent her. The message came through at 02:14 a.m. Ben's voice ragged tight, speaking through bursts of gunfire and static. "Glass Viper is compromised. We were set up. Ghost, if you're hearing this, do not trust the chain of command." It was never logged in the mission records, never mentioned in the debriefs, and the moment Evelyn tried to submit it, her access was revoked. They said the file was corrupted, said she was traumatized, hallucinating under stress, but she had the recording, not the digital backup, the analog one. From a burner phone she never listed, and she kept it close, for 3 years, waiting for the right place, the right moment. Now inside Fort Liberty that moment had arrived. And the man who buried the truth was no longer behind layers of clearance. He was standing 10 feet away, mocking her with a coffee stain on a spotless floor. The room froze when the M4 hit the floor. It clattered across the tiles, spinning once, then stopped, pointing straight at Evelyn's boots. Colonel Cole smirked, arms crossed. "Well, be useful for once. Wipe it down, mop, girl." No one laughed. Not Captain Hayes, not Lieutenant Monroe. Even they felt something shift. Evelyn knelt slowly, silently, but instead of reaching for the mop, she picked up the rifle. Thumb on the mag release. Click, bolt lock, inspection. Every movement clean, mechanical, familiar. Hayes blinked. What the? In 26 seconds, the M4 was field stripped and laid out on the floor in perfect military sequence. No one spoke. Not even Cole. Not even when she said without looking up, "Your extractor spring's shot," and someone tampered with the trigger pull. "You want it clean, Colonel, or functional?" And just like that, the mop disappeared. And the ghost stepped into view. Colonel Cole's jaw twitched. His gaze darted from the perfectly stripped rifle to the woman kneeling beside it. Where the hell did you learn that? Evelyn said nothing. She simply rose back, straight hands behind her like a soldier standing for inspection. Captain Hayes leaned in, voice low. "Sir, those moves, those aren't learned at boot camp." No one had ever asked where Evelyn came from. She just appeared one day at Fort Liberty, mop in hand, papers, clean history. Blank. Because the truth, she wasn't assigned here. She infiltrated. The name Evelyn Shaw didn't show up on any active duty list or even in retired records, because the unit she served in never officially existed. A ghost team. Black Ops. Vanished from the books, buried under missions that never happened. And if Cole looked close enough, he might remember why she looked so familiar. But the last time he saw that face, she was bleeding in a satellite feed from Kandahar. The last mission Evelyn Carter ever took had 5 names on the manifest. Only 4 bodies came back, and the 5th, the one no one dared mention, was Ben Cole, Colonel Cole's younger brother. He'd served beside Evelyn, trusted her, questioned orders when no one else would. When Operation Glass Viper went dark, it was Ben who sent that final message, the one that never made it into the system. Cole told everyone Ben died a hero, but heroes don't vanish from records. Heroes don't get wiped, unless they're inconvenient, unless someone up top decides a name is more dangerous alive than dead. Evelyn never forgot. Not the ambush, not the silence after, not the way Cole gave the green light despite Ben's warning. And now, that silence was about to be broken, because the woman scrubbing his floors was carrying Ben's voice in her pocket. It was no longer a rumor, no longer a suspicion whispered over mess hall coffee. Evelyn had proof. She pulled a battered flash drive from a pocket sewn into the lining of her mop cart, unlabeled Dusty Dangerous. She slid it across the table to Captain Hayes. "Play it. Time code 02:14 a.m. Static. Crackling wind." Then a voice, fractured but unmistakable. "Ben Cole. We were misled. The ops compromised. This isn't bad intel, it's a setup. Rick knew. Ghost, get this out. Don't let him bury us." Silence fell like a blackout. Colonel Cole's face turned pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, because that recording wasn't just a message, it was an indictment. Of him, of everything he built. And the janitor they ignored, she'd been carrying the truth every day, in plain sight. Ben Cole was supposed to vanish. No body, no burial, just a folded flag and a line in a file marked MIA, presumed KIA. But ghosts don't disappear. They leave traces. And Evelyn had followed them one breadcrumb at a time. Illegible mission logs, redacted reports that contradicted themselves, surveillance footage that malfunctioned at the exact moment of extraction failure. All of it led back to one signature, one man who pushed the mission forward, despite warnings, despite risk. Colonel Richard Cole. He'd called it tactical necessity, command pressure, operational sacrifice, but Ben's voice cracking through the speakers told a different story. Not a tactical failure, a betrayal. And now, the one person who never stopped asking questions was standing 10 feet from the man who tried to silence them all. And for the first time in 3 years, someone in that room believed her. They'd all watched her handle the M4 like it was an extension of her body. Fast, quiet, exact. But that wasn't the real threat. The weapon had always been her silence. For 3 years, Evelyn Carter moved like smoke through Fort Liberty. She saw the backdoor briefings, heard whispers behind soundproof glass, noticed when officers disappeared from rosters without transfer orders. She filed nothing, said nothing, because silence buys time. And now time had run out. Captain Hayes stared at her. "You were never reassigned, were you?" She met his eyes. "I was embedded." That one word shifted the ground. Because if she was embedded, someone authorized it. Someone higher than Cole. Someone who knew exactly what he'd done and wanted eyes inside. And Evelyn. She wasn't just the witness. She was the trigger. The file was hidden 3 levels deep in a system even most generals couldn't touch. Label OP Phoenix. Ghost Reinstatement Protocol. Access Clearance. Black. Eyes only. But Evelyn had already seen it. Not through hacking, not through brute force. She'd been granted access 3 years ago, signed off by someone wearing stars, not stripes. Inside that file, a mission directive. One name circled in red key L. Richard Cole. Objective. Monitor, assess, confirm internal misconduct related to Operation Glass Viper. She wasn't a janitor. She wasn't even undercover. She was the mission. Every mop push, every overheard briefing, every bolt she quietly tightened on training rifles was evidence. "You were watching me," Cole snapped. Evelyn didn't blink. Not watching, building the case. And now the last piece had been played. General Marcus Harrison was the kind of man who didn't flinch when the room shook. Silver-starred, steel-spined. He'd buried friends, made enemies, and kept his word like a loaded gun, always ready. He was the only one who hadn't tried to stop Evelyn when she disappeared, because he was the one who sent her. "You don't ask ghosts to haunt," he'd said. "You send them to remind the living what they've forgotten." When the Glass Viper report landed on his desk, doctored, rushed too clean, he didn't blow the whistle. He opened a sealed envelope instead. Inside, Evelyn's reinstatement orders. Ghost Division. Active duty. Solo directive. She was declared KIA on paper, but in his office she was very much alive. "Bring me the truth," he told her, "even if it costs us everything." And now, truth was standing in Cole's shadow, ready to burn the lies down. Lieutenant Monroe had always played by the book, until the book stopped making sense. He'd noticed it first in the rotation logs, missions reshuffled at the last-minute, gear orders going unaccounted. Then came the whispers. Training exercises canceled without cause, names removed from rosters overnight, and always nearby. Evelyn, quiet, predictable, invisible until she wasn't. After the rifle incident, Monroe stayed late. He pulled clearance requests from 6 months ago. One stood out, a Level 3 weapons audit request, filed under a janitor's ID. Approved, signed, buried. "No janitor files an audit," Monroe muttered. That night he knocked on Evelyn's door. She didn't ask how he found her. He just held up the file and said, "I think we've both been cleaning up after someone else's mess." She opened the door. Not to let him in, to let him choose a side. It was supposed to be routine. Just another empty rotation slot in the Armory training hall. But that morning, Evelyn stood at the center of the mat, waiting. Lieutenant Monroe entered first, hesitating only a second before stepping in. Colonel Cole followed, expression unreadable, hands clenched tight. "You think you can test me?" he spat. Evelyn didn't flinch. Didn't raise her voice. She simply pointed at the Barrett sniper rifle laid out behind her. Disassembled. Clean. Waiting. No orders, no ranks. Just hands. "Let's see who remembers what it really means to be a soldier." Cole stepped forward. But Monroe held him back, voice low. "You're not being tested on weapons, sir. You're being tested on truth. Because this wasn't about who could pull a trigger. It was about who remembered what they pulled it for. And in that room, under fluorescent light and quiet breath, the past finally had a witness." Colonel Cole had stared down warlords, insurgents, and courts-martial boards. But not once had he faltered until now. Because when Evelyn looked at him across that training mat, she wasn't angry. She wasn't broken. She was steady. And that scared him more than any weapon ever could. Her eyes didn't accuse, they knew. "I didn't sign off on his death," Cole muttered. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because guilt isn't just what you feel. It's what you recognize. In someone else. He remembered Ben's voice, his doubt before the op. He remembered ignoring it, pushing forward anyway. Because hesitation meant weakness. And weakness didn't earn promotions. Now, staring at the one person who knew exactly what happened, Cole saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. The man he used to be. And the shadow of the brother he'd left behind. She could have ended him right there. One recording. One statement to General Harrison, and Colonel Richard Cole would be a memory, a disgraced name buried in bureaucracy. But Evelyn Carter wasn't here for revenge. She was here for something harder. "You were promoted for what happened," she said quietly. "So now, you're going to pay for it, not with rank, with work." Cole narrowed his eyes. "What kind of punishment is that?" She stepped closer, laid a sealed envelope on the bench between them. "You'll report to me. No uniform, no title, just sweat and silence. As an assistant instructor for the first all-female Special Ops training program." He scoffed, then stopped, because buried beneath the humiliation was the truth. This wasn't punishment, it was a second chance, and not everyone gets one. Evelyn handed over the official directive, typed, signed, sealed, but one condition was never written down. As Cole skimmed the orders, she said it aloud. Low, firm, final. "You will never instruct with your mouth, only with your failures." He looked up stunned. "You want me silent?" She nodded. "Let them see what ego costs. Let them learn what not to become." There would be no lectures, no medals on his chest, no rewriting the past in flattering terms. Every drill, every rep, every mistake corrected under her command. He'd relive the moment he ignored his brother's warning. She wasn't trying to humiliate him. She was trying to hollow him out, make space for someone new, because redemption doesn't come with absolution. It comes with sweat, humility, and silence. There were no headlines, no press releases, just a sealed directive and a list of 12 names, all women. Some had fought in shadows overseas. Some had never been given a chance to fight at all, but every one of them was hand-picked by Evelyn Carter. They trained in silence, before dawn, after hours, no cameras, no applause, no promises. Cole showed up each day, silent, bruised, watching. He carried sandbags, reset courses, cleaned rifles without being asked. Not because she made him, because he owed it. The new Ghost Division wasn't about revenge, it was about resetting the balance, not just of power, but of principle. And for the first time in years, Fort Liberty wasn't echoing with orders shouted down from thrones. It pulsed with something deeper: discipline, precision, quiet defiance, the kind of silence that knows it's being heard. It came through an encrypted relay, a low-frequency burst buried in static routed through 3 satellites. Anomalous, fragmented, unconfirmed. But Evelyn recognized the cadence. She'd heard it once before beneath gunfire, in Ben Cole's final voice message. Now, 3 years later, the signal repeated 5 clicks, 1 pause, then 3 short tones. It was his field code. Cole stood behind her as the data loaded silent. "It's impossible," he whispered. "He's gone." Evelyn didn't blink, didn't hope. Hope was dangerous. He was never recovered, never verified, just written off. The signal carried a GPS tag, somewhere in northern Syria, a black site, off-grid. Ben Cole might be alive, or someone wanted them to believe he was, if that's really him. Evelyn said, voice barely audible, "Then, this isn't over," and Cole knew he had one more thing left to answer for. There was no briefing, no satellite support, no authorization, only a name whispered in the dark Operation Reclaim Echo, unofficial, unfunded, unforgiven. Evelyn didn't need approval. She had the team her ghosts, 12 women who owed nothing to the system and everything to the truth. She laid out the map in the same room where Cole once humiliated her. Now she was at the head of the table, and he was standing silent waiting for orders. "We go in low, quiet. We don't extract intel. We extract him if he's still breathing." Cole met her eyes. No protest, just a nod. He knew this mission wasn't about redemption anymore. It was about debt. One man left behind, and the people who refused to let that happen twice. They called it Echo Site because it answered to no one. No flag, no insignia. Just a grid on a forgotten map where black budgets and buried names went to die. The insertion was surgical, no lights, no chatter. The Ghost Division moved like shadow across sand, their breaths synced, their silence weaponized. But the closer they got, the more wrong it felt. Sensor grids were active, but no guards. Doors unlocked, but no signs of struggle. It wasn't abandoned, it was waiting. Cole swept the hallway first, and that's when he saw it, a carving on the wall scratched in with a metal cuff. Still alive, still waiting. Initials BC. Evelyn ran her fingers over the letters. "He was here," she whispered, "and he wanted us to find this. But they all knew if Ben was alive, he wasn't the only one watching them now. The cell was colder than expected. No chains, no guards, just silence. A single cot, a shattered mirror, and a man slumped in the corner back to the door. Evelyn stepped in first, weapon lowered, but ready. "Ben," she called softly. He didn't move. Then, a twitch, a breath, a whisper. "You came too late." She knelt beside him. His face was gaunt beard, overgrown eyes, bloodshot but alive, till he turned toward the mirror, etched on the glass in bloodied fingertips. It wasn't Cole. The room pulsed with a new kind of silence. Behind her, Cole stood frozen. His jaw clenched not in guilt, but in realization. "Then who gave the order?" Evelyn asked. Ben looked past them both. Someone higher. Someone watching even now. The betrayal had layers, and they were still inside the trap. They had names, they had proof, but they didn't have him, because the one who ordered Glass Viper, the one who marked Ben for sacrifice, wasn't in the chain of command anymore. He was above it. Retired 4-star, former Joint Special Operations Commander, now a private contractor with deep black access and no oversight. General Langford. Evelyn remembered him from years ago, calm, charismatic, a strategist's mind with a politician's smile. The kind of man who could make murder sound like necessity. Ben had threatened to go to him, to blow the whistle, and Langford had listened. Then made the call that erased him. Cole stared at the classified photo. "He sold us out." Evelyn nodded. He sold out the whole division, and now they had two options. Expose him, or bury the last chance at justice forever. They didn't need permission, just a signal. Evelyn and Monroe hijacked an unused military frequency, one reserved for emergency field updates, never meant for public ears. At 0300 hours, the transmission went live. "This is Ghost Division. Active. Present. Witnessing." Her voice, calm and sharp, echoed across secure bases worldwide. Then came the file's redacted orders, audit trails, Ben Cole's original voice recording, and finally, Langford's signature buried beneath a fake initial stamp. The line went silent. And then, it lit up. Incoming pings from Fort Bragg, Langley, Germany, Okinawa. Officers who'd stayed silent now sending two words. "We see." Langford's house of lies built on silence, fear, and shadows was catching fire because the one thing he never planned for was a ghost that came back louder than ever. General Langford didn't run. He didn't deny. He did what all-powerful men do when the walls begin to crack. He tried to control the narrative. But this time the story wasn't his to tell. Within 48 hours of the broadcast, 5 international agencies opened concurrent investigations. His consulting firm lost all government contracts. His private security clearances revoked. Reporters swarmed. Congress called for hearings. And Ghost Division. They stood in silence, watching him unravel. Langford appeared on one broadcast once. "There were threats you people will never understand." Evelyn watched from a dark briefing room. "And you used them as shields," she whispered. "But ghosts don't forget." Cole didn't speak. He just nodded finally, not in command, but in agreement. Langford thought he was untouchable, but justice doesn't need rank. Sometimes it just needs one voice brave enough to speak. They were never meant to be seen. Ghost Division operated in silence, trained to vanish, built to be forgotten. But now, the world knew. News crews lined the gates of Fort Liberty. Whispers turned into headlines. Classified unit exposes corruption at highest level. Women-led team brings down former general. But recognition didn't feel like victory. It felt unfinished. Evelyn stood at the edge of the training field watching the new recruits run drills at dawn. Ben sat nearby, thinner, healing slowly, but alive. "They'll ask who we are," he said. She nodded. "Tell them we were never ghosts, just soldiers. No one wanted to see." Cole stood behind them, no rank on his chest, only dirt on his hands. Because real redemption isn't loud. It's earned in quiet steps forward, one honest day at a time. It had yellowed at the edges. Folded and refolded so many times the creases blurred the ink. Evelyn had written it the night Ben's signal first went dark. Not to command, not to Cole. To Ben's mother, but she never mailed it. Inside, her words were simple, raw. He wasn't just a soldier. He was our compass. He saw something broken and tried to fix it, even when no one believed him. And I wasn't fast enough. She held the letter now standing outside the newly named Carter Cole Training Annex. The recruits would graduate next week. 12 women, all chosen, all earned. Evelyn didn't send the letter. She placed it beneath a plaque at the gate sealed in glass where no one could miss it. Some truths weren't for headlines. They were for hearts that had waited in silence. And some ghosts wrote their own endings. It was a quiet ceremony. No cameras, no speeches, just boots gravel and the rustle of flags in the morning wind. The memorial wall at Fort Liberty had always told the same story, names etched in stone, honored but unexplained. Until today, a new name had been added, Captain Benjamin Cole. Below it, in smaller letters, for asking the question no one else dared. Evelyn stood with the recruits behind her. Cole at her side, hands clasped behind his back, not as an officer, but as a brother. Ben stepped forward, still healing, still limping, and touched his own name. Alive, yet inscribed. Because sacrifice isn't always about death. Sometimes it's about truth that nearly cost you everything. He wasn't forgotten, Evelyn said. He was just waiting for the right people to remember, and now they had. It was late. The halls of Fort Liberty were quiet, the kind of silence that comes not from fear, but from peace finally earned. Evelyn walked alone, pushing the same mop cart she'd used for 3 years. Same gray handle, same squeaky wheel. But this time, every step echoed different. Because this wasn't cover, it was closure. She stopped at the hallway outside the operations wing where Cole once mocked her, where Ben's name had been erased. She set the mop aside, knelt one last time, and polished the floor with her hand, slow, deliberate, not as a janitor, but as a soldier honoring the ground they all stood on. Then she stood, left the cart behind, and walked into the dawn where a new generation waited not for orders but for truth. Because some ghosts don't disappear, they lead.